Hello and welcome to another episode of Devil's Discourse. And this time we will be talking about life events as a Satanist. And with me I have familiar voices, Lara,
Hail Satan.
Lygia,
Hail Satan.
and fellow Satanist, Lara.
Hail Satan. We're all elves today.
Yeah.
We are. The most satanic of letters in the alphabet. Is it? I don't know. Oh, Christ, that would make LeVay. Oh, no, let's not go there.
Fuck that guy.
Right. So, if you'd like to briefly introduce yourself, Lara, as you're new to the podcast, and let us know what your role in life is and how that might have bearing on the subject we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so I am an Anatomical Pathology Technologist, or we'll just use APT for short. Not a mortician. Nobody use that word, please. I can explain why a bit later if you want, but for now, I'm just an APT. So my job is I work in mortuaries in a hospital specifically, but we exist as a profession. We work in hospital mortuaries and public mortuaries that are run by like local councils, and we look after the deceased in hospitals. Basically, if you imagine the mortuary as just being another ward in a hospital, we are that staff. The deceased are our patients, and so our day-to-day sort of job is we book in new arrivals, we release those people to funeral directors, and we facilitate visits with families. We're less on the assisting with making funeral arrangements and things like that. We know that stuff so that we can help the families and discuss if they have any questions. And we also assist with post-mortem examinations, which is that's the fancy bit that you see on the TV, what people are more interested in, but that is actually quite a small part of our job. And there are some mortuaries that don't even do post-mortems. They are just a place where deceased people go and then leave again. And that's very, very short thing of what I do.
Excellent. Well, thanks for the intro. A very important job. And like you insinuated there, a lot of people don't really know what goes on because they've seen shitty TV tropes on various shows.
Quincy.
So.
that was my introduction to the world of post-mortem. Quincy on ITV.
Mine was Dana Scully in the X-Files. I am of the Scully effects generation, so I wanted to be. I literally wanted Dana Scully. Yes. I wanted to be her, and then finding out that what you had to be, because she's actually a forensic pathologist as well as being an FBI agent, sort of everything else, and finding out what you had to do that, like to be a forensic pathologist in the UK, you have to be a doctor, and there's so much that it's years and years and years of training. And when I was young, I was like, I'm not for that at all. That's not something that actually I want to do. And I didn't even know my job existed at all back then. It's not something that comes up in career fairs or anything at school, or it's just existing. Google didn't exist when I was in school, so it's just something that I found out about years later when I was reading up about. I was about to become a forensic pathologist again because I was just let's see if anything's changed. And it came up there as like, oh, if you don't fancy being a forensic pathologist, then there's this role instead. And I read the job description and was like, that is exactly what I want to do. And then it took about 10 years for me to get a trainee role, because you don't go to school to do this. You need GCSEs, like basic maths, English, science, and that's it. And then when you go and get a trainee position, it's like an apprenticeship essentially, and you train on the job. It takes about 18 months to complete the course, as long as you pass everything first time and everything. And you learn everything you need to know in the workplace. And it's a long time getting into the job, but once you're there, you've ironically got a job for life. But we are not a registered profession. So what that means is, like doctors and nurses and a lot of other professions that work in the NHS, where you have to be registered with a profession like the GMC for doctors or NMC for nurses and stuff, that regulate you and sort of give you your scope of practice and pay and all that kind of stuff. And if you do anything wrong, you get reported and then investigated and potentially struck off, which means you can't practice anymore. People in the death industry don't have that. So functionally, anyone can do this job. And if there's anything that's a bit shady that goes on, you could just go and work somewhere else, which is something that we are as a profession working on. We want to be professionally registered to give that protection for our patients and for us. But as it is, it's just kind of a bit of a free for all, really, in terms of regulatory powers.
Do people's, I mean, when I say people, I'm talking about the people who end up on your ward, for want of a better phrase. Is there any kind of like religious preparation as part of your role?
The part of my role specifically, no.
Mm.
We are aware of different religious needs. Like the most common one is Muslim and Jewish patients need to be buried, preferably within 24 hours of death. But there's a lot of things that have to go on between sort of dying and burial, which we personally don't have anything to do with. That is now all to do with the medical examiners, which is a relatively new role. I think it started in 2024, and every single death in England and Wales has to be scrutinised by the medical examiner, which is essentially an independent doctor that looks over the medical certificate of cause of death to make sure it's all okay and sort of nothing dodgy has been going on. And that is passed to the registrar, where death is registered. That enables someone to be buried. So it can be done within 24 hours. It can be done very quickly. Usually the process takes a little bit longer. So that's the main one that we need to know in terms of it, that's just as a practicality for us, just knowing that we have to do this quite quickly. But in terms of the actual sort of preparation of the deceased, we don't do that. That happens at the funeral directors when they go there. There are there are lots of different preferences or like things that you have to be aware of in terms of different faiths with after death, but it's not something that directly impacts on what I do in that way. But it's just interesting, which I'm sure we'll get talking about in here, that the different attitudes and customs and practices surrounding death and funerals, and we get to see quite a lot of that, and also people's attitudes towards that in themselves, and an insight that you may not necessarily get normally from just a lay people outside of my job.
So, thoughts on potential satanic death rites funerals at this point, because it's not something that I've certainly ever come across. Having come from a religious background, most of the funerals I've attended have had some form of religion. There was one atheist one that I attended, which was also a green burial. So it used cardboard coffin covered in some kind of wool, and it was out in a place where they planted trees after death. So it's kind of more of a atheistic nature type of burial. But obviously there is the option to have satanic death rites. Does anyone have any thoughts on what that might be?
I think people's, and possibly this isn't just Satanist, but how someone chooses to sort of like mark their own passing is kind of indicative of the person they were during their life. Personally, I don't feel a great deal of need for much pomp and circumstance and ceremony and all that kind of stuff. I would rather, just do whatever is the cheapest and then meet up at the pub afterwards and have a few drinks, and that's about it for me. I don't really have.
I was just recently also talking to some people in my family, like what would my idea be? I don't know yet. I feel too young to think like this. It is still a little bit confusing in my head, like what exactly I want. But one thing I know is that where I come from, I haven't seen it here. I have been to a few cemeteries. I have seen beautiful graves and like monuments, but I don't see people coming there to actually really bring that much, stuff and flowers and competing in how the grave looks every day. In my country and that part of Europe, this is a big thing. Like it's a competition. It's actually crazy. And the money that is spent on graves for people who are not here anymore is also crazy. And the pressure on the families and the kids, I never want that to be left after me. I would really appreciate if like my children my friends remembered, me, the memories we have, what we did together, what was said, beautiful things, not having me in a calendar like, oh, we need to go and clean her grave, for fuck's sake, again. I don't want that. So I'm starting there, like, okay, I know what I don't want, but also I'm not sure what is possible in the satanic ceremony. I don't know what is legal, what is actually official, what can be done here.
Well,
I'm not really sure if I know.
You can have celebrants who are kind of like humanist or secular. So, I mean, for the type of Satanism that we all follow, which is atheistic Satanism, I don't think it would be too much of a leap.
But you have to know this before you die, I guess. You have to arrange this yourself, or
well, maybe not arrange it yourself, but leave
how
information about how you'd like it, I guess.
I mean, before you die, obviously.
Get out the Ouija board. We need to know what Lodge is.
Yeah, like, let's ask her.
I mean, the way I understand it is whoever performs the ceremony, that doesn't necessarily need to be registered in any way, shape or form. The actual cremation, burial, where you end up, like I say, there's the option of a nature one.
Yeah.
That is dealt with by the company you pay to kind of dispose of your body, for want of a better term. And then you could literally have anyone do your last rites or whatever you want to call it. My idea would be everyone has a big piss up afterwards and maybe play some Rotting Christ when the coffin goes down or whatever. And that's about it. The issue I can see with that is obviously other people will be there. There won't just be Satanists. So it has to be something that doesn't offend everyone, which is, I see, the major problem with any form of public satanic ritual, where whether it be birth or wedding or whatever, is how do you, because every Satanist has loads of people around them, family or whatever, that aren't, and that might be religious, they might be Christian, they might be whatever, and they certainly wouldn't want to see any sort of satanic imagery or anything being used. That is the main problem I see with some of these sort of celebrations.
One thing that I've heard, and I think it's a really, really good way of sort of thinking about this, is that what makes a good funeral? And I've heard it said that a good funeral is about the dead for the living. And I think that is exactly what you're talking about, the balance between making sure that the funeral, the service reflects accurately, sort of is a representation of the deceased person, as in, I'd like to think of it like, oh, is this something that the deceased would like to attend themselves? Is this like a party that they would like to show up at? Would they recognise that this is actually about them? But it's also more important of a ritual for the living person, because they're the one that've got to go on with that. And legally speaking, you only need, as I think you said, the body disposal. Technically, that's the only legal part that you need to do. You need to be buried or cremated, which are the only methods at the moment legal in the UK. Like traditional cremation, like flame cremation, but there are also other ways that potentially coming in. So there's human composting, which is something somewhere in America that does it. I think it might be coming over here as well. And aquamation, which is water cremation. And they're put forward as alternatives than traditional cremation, just for environmental impact. So, but all of those things it's a practicality issue, just in like the legal aspect. You have to dispose of this body, but a cost issue. There's a more and more move to direct cremation and stuff, which are a lot cheaper. You don't have a funeral service, what people may think of as a funeral service, and then you're left to sort of do the memorialization, I guess, which I think is what we're talking about here, is that you have the actual body disposal aspect of it, which is completely separate to the funeral or the memorialization, which can happen afterwards, or it can happen before, whatever. And I think it's that bit which, you don't have to just have one. You can have one that's for the masses, for everyone, and then your own, whether it just be you yourself individually, or like for the Satanists in their life, like to come together and have something that is unique to that person, like rather than there being a one size fits all service or way that it looks like. I had 2 deaths in my family last year, when one was a cremation that was a humanist celebrant at a crematorium, and you only had about half an hour, and this celebrant had never actually met my family before this, but you wouldn't have thought that by the time that they, the service that they gave. It was wonderful, and that's the talent that they do. Meet with a family, make everything about, you've got to distill this person's life down into half an hour, which is quite a challenge. And then I had another relative who had a traditional Catholic church service, which is obviously incredibly different, and the vibe was just completely different as well. But it's something that she would have wanted. Did I hate to say enjoy it, but you know what I mean? If it was very different, I could say which one I preferred and which one I would like to have for myself. But in terms of coming away and going, would this person have liked that? Well, she would have. So yeah, it's very much about the difference between practicality and personality to the person, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we do say as Satanists that all the rituals that we do are not set in stone and can be utilised, built on, changed by anybody else. So why should this one be any different? At the end of the day, it's just another ritual.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the one thing to remember is that certainly all Satanists will, although their close family or whatever will not know they're Satanists necessarily, they will know by now that they're atheists. That they're not religious, that they don't believe in God. So you can have an actual humanist ceremony for the burial or whatever, and then afterwards have a celebration with Satanists, which is entirely satanic kind of thing. If that's the kind of thing I understand from what you just said, Lara, the public facing one, and then the private one, which is to the person whose death is being celebrated, mourned, whatever. The one that's more important would be the satanic one for a Satanist. But then you can also have the humanist one for everyone else, because there's no reason to make a big point here and go, well, everyone else, I'm dead, I'm going to piss everyone else in the family off by having them stand around and listen to a load of Hail Satans and people in black robes.
I mean, you could sort of, one of the things that we all sort of like constantly say is that sort of like one of the core things that we say is consent and, autonomy and informed consent. You could sort of like have a ceremony where you could say, if you're a Satanist, follow this bit of the script. If you're not, or you just don't want to, follow this bit of the script. I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, but neither would, if I was going to have a sort of like specifically Satanist memorial, I wouldn't want to compromise on it for the Satanists who were there. I would sort of like, I mean, like Lara, I went to a Catholic funeral last year, and I didn't do all the responses because I'm not Catholic. But the rest of it, it was nice to be there, and that sounds awful. I don't mean it was nice to be there because I was glad the person was dead. I mean, it was nice to sit with everybody else who knew her and the family and everything, and sort of like share that moment. But I didn't feel any particular need to go and take a swig of the wine and do the responses and all that kind of stuff that the rest of them did. So I think it should be possible for a Satanist or a satanic ritual, public ritual, to be similar to that.
You're not allowed the wine or the communion wafer.
You're not.
You've got to be a Catholic for that. Oh. You've got to have had your first communion. Otherwise, you're not allowed to touch any of that shit.
Yeah, I've not been excommunicated, but I don't technically have that. But I wouldn't. But
well, apparently it's quite hard to get excommunicated. I've heard of someone who tried to at least get unregistered as a Catholic and even ended up writing to the Vatican about it. And they went, no, sorry, here are all our books.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But then, the question is, do I care? Because it doesn't mean anything to me.
Well,
It's their
in
problem.
terms of-
If I'm still in their books, I'm not, because who cares?
yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's
But on the other hand,
made up.
having a bunch of weirdos in the Vatican have records of me, as far as the Catholic Church is concerned, I'm still a Catholic.
Catholic for life.
yes.
Yeah, you are. You are. Unless
You're a
apparently,
sheep, Lithus. Sorry.
apparently the worst sin in Catholicism certainly is to renounce the Holy Ghost, to actually say blaspheme against the Holy Ghost, renounce the power of the Holy
Are
Ghost.
they not equal, the Trinity?
I have no fucking idea. I never understood it. It seems
thought-
like, and
Well,
they
anyway.
spend so much time arguing about it in various
Mhm.
councils of Nicaea.
Is there a
Yeah.
specific wording you need to use? Is it what
Yeah, I want to know.
does it need to be on camera?
I renounce the Holy Ghost. Done. Safe from Catholicism.
Where are you?
I've never understood that.
Mm-hmm.
And please, folks, if one of you wants to email in and explain it to me, don't bother. I won't read it.
Also, again, who cares? Because it's all made up, so they can tell you whatever they want.
Well, yeah.
What?
And then there's the Unitarians who do not believe in the Holy Trinity at
Yeah.
all. So, but we're moving off onto religions here, other religions. I mean, I think the same would apply to any ceremony, be it birth, marriage, whatever. You're going to hit the same problem as a Satanist, which is how to please everyone and yourself.
I have been to, I say Satanist wedding. There were definitely parts of the wedding that if you're a Satanist and you heard some of the things that were said and some of the iconography and other things, and it was like, I know what that is. And it was done brilliantly, because to other people who were there, they wouldn't have a clue. It wouldn't have been important. And I think that was a stunning wedding. But I think that could also be another way of, just looking at it, like having little nods to things that are just in plain view that are only for the people who know.
I think I know the one you're talking about. I've seen the
I think-
pictures, but that's
Mm.
and where did the officiating.
Yeah,
It did look
was,
great.
Yeah, it was the bits that ring fooded were just it was great. But there are ways of doing it.
Yeah.
Don't need to scream in your face, and I don't think it necessarily has to.
Mm.
I do prefer that. Just for those who know, they would know.
Yeah, that was a really clever way of doing it, which is, like you said, the people who knew, and the people who didn't, it was kind of obfuscated from them. Yeah.
Is there a I've kind of wondered this to myself, sort of listening to some of the things I've said to family and friends. Is there a part of us that quite likes the fact that we can code things in a way that is only understandable to people like us? Is that quite a nice thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like secret handshake.
Secret handshake.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the
Laura's turned this into the fucking Masons
innocent
here.
reactions, like they don't know.
I mean, there's things like the sigil of Lilith and the sigil of Lucifer, which I have worn all over the place at various occasions, and it's like no one. If you don't know, you don't know what that is.
Yeah, like
You have no idea.
I have had somebody say to me once, looking at the badges on my jacket, "Oh, your star's upside down. Let me just sort that out for you." I'm like, oh, well, okay. I'll change it back once you've gone. I'll
touch
change
my
it back once
star.
you've gone. I think the only... I was just thinking, this has just literally just popped into my mind. We've talked about death and funerals and touched on weddings. Birth would be difficult because we are all about consent, autonomy. I would not want to have...
well, unless you're Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, that's true.
What's his name?
Adrian.
Adrian.
Hail Adrian.
And it's clearly
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
yes, if it literally is the
tiny
devil, then it may be different. But I don't think any of us
No,
would want
seriously.
to sort of impose an opinion, a belief system, a religion on a child that's just literally just come into the world until they're old enough to sort of like figure it out for themselves. I don't think any of us would want that.
But you can have a celebration of the birth. So you can have a satanic celebration of the creation of a new life without imposing it on the child. And this name was mentioned earlier. And we are not LaVeyan Satanists, right? In no way. There are various problems with LaVeyan Satanism. And one of them was that he did bang on about consent and don't impose your religion on your children. And then he did satanic baptisms and on his own daughter, amongst others. And you're going, well, no, you just have imposed your religion on your daughter by performing a satanic baptism. So I'd say that kind of thing is a no-no because it goes completely against the consent thing. It's like, let your kids decide for themselves what religion or non-religion they want to adhere to when they're old enough to make up their own mind. But I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to celebrate as parents with friends in a satanic manner the fact that there's a new life and not associate that new life in any way, shape or form with your satanic beliefs, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I would also, I don't know, a few days ago, I have watched some silly videos of like cringy gender reveals. And I was
Sorry.
joking.
Not just, did you said gender reveals? I nearly choked on my tea there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that made me think of like, imagine you go through the whole thing, you invite all your family and friends, and there are families where this is really a big deal, and usually the father has the strongest reaction. I don't know, maybe these are selected for the videos I've seen, but like they are usually unhappy with the girl and happy with the boy. And then I'm thinking, okay, let's say it's a boy, and just you wait 14, 15 years and the child might be trans. So where are we? Hello? You know? So that just made me think about this. I have never done that because I didn't care about the gender of my children. I love them for who they are, whatever. But this might be something that is quite connected to some specific beliefs and religions, because I don't think we think like this.
No.
We celebrate, if you want to have a child, you are a parent, you celebrate the happiness that this is, such a big thing. You have a baby, you have a child, you're happy, and that's it. So I think there is a big difference.
You can have a satanic gender reveal, which is non-gendered. If the balloons are black, it's a boy. If the balloons are black, it's a girl.
Yeah. I would be very careful because this is going with that child for like 15 years or whatever. And the pressure is unbelievable.
Well, we didn't have a gender reveal when my daughter was born because I don't think they were even a thing back then. But I will admit that I was very, very happy that we'd had a girl because it was the first girl born into the family in about 85, 90 years. So it was kind of a big deal for us.
Okay.
But I know what you mean. Straight away, pacing on expectations of who they are going to be when they get older.
I have a trans child, so maybe this is, constantly on my mind. And I was thinking, if we have done that to my child, I think they would feel pressured to still like maintain that for longer and like feel like this would be disappointing. So it's just a little thought.
I think there's also something to be said like about how a lot of things now are obviously posted online, and all of these things that we're talking about just in general, like they live online forever, and even if you wanted to take it back, it's not going to go away. And it's I know there's a lot of conversations between people, and I'm not a parent, but even just posting videos of their children online, like having their face on parents' Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever like that. And it's, yeah, the idea that the kids should have privacy or like have a choice in social media participation at some point. And it's, yeah, a lot of these, like say, a lot of these gender reveals or things like that are done very, very publicly as well. And I think that's another side of it, which is really like icky as well, especially when you have the videos you were talking about, like the bad reaction videos.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine seeing that as the child when they're older?
Yeah.
Like, that would be pretty terrible.
God, yeah.
It's so painful. I couldn't watch more than 3 of them because I was really angry with those people. Because like, yeah.
Just as a side note, and this is completely off the topic, but it's related to what you were just saying. I watched a couple of videos a few years ago and it was from family YouTubers, and they did like videos where they pretended they hadn't got their kids anything for Christmas and things like that.
Yes.
Like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? I mean, your children are upset. You're recording them being upset and posting it on YouTube for everyone's entertainment.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, as like carrying on from that, as a complete aside to all this, I think I saw something online that was talking about how some of these like family TikTokers or YouTubers or whatever, the people who are including their children in their, it's their job apparently to be content creators, they're moving to other states because I don't know if it's in California, but yeah, I'll have to check that. But there's some states in America where I don't know if it's payment or consent. There's something surrounding the children in the videos need to either give their consent or they need to get paid. There's something around that. So there are some families who are moving out of the state to somewhere else
to avoid it,
so that they
don't have to follow that law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How messed up.
With all of these things, it is literally the parents going, it's all about us. Fuck the kids. It's literally a tiny bit of thought being put into how the kids are going to feel about it in future. And it's like, I'd say, beware. If you want to do something like that, don't be surprised if when the kids are grown up and you're old and you're losing your mind and you're in bed shitting yourself, they put that online.
Let's create some content.
Revenge.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. You know, it's like, it is effectively the equivalent of that kind of thing. You know, it is horrendous. Because they can't
give any consent when they're babies, toddlers, and they're making the money for the family they don't even know. Or, preteens, even teens.
So one thing I wanted to broach with everyone is I was at a meeting not too long ago and the Law Commission were there and they were discussing how they're looking into the potential for solidifying in law people's funeral wishes, or what aspects of certain things that happen after someone's death can be actually made a law. So, for example, if you said that you wanted to have a cremation versus a burial, or you wanted to have, be buried or have your last resting place in this place compared to this place, that is made an actual legally binding choice. So I just kind of want to throw that out there of where do you think that your wishes for after death should be followed? So yeah, and they were just talking about how, sort of funeral wishes, one of them like was big one of how much can you make someone's funeral wishes legally binding. And like, so if you say that, just now, like what you would like to happen after your death, how much do you think, just you guys now, think that people should be compelled to follow your wishes?
That's difficult.
I mean, a part of me wants to say it's my human right, but also there are people who might have really extravagant, crazy wishes, and it might drain the whole family or something.
Exactly.
So this is.
And there was another point that they brought up that was brought up in the room was who would be taken to court over this? Like, who would
legally responsible for?
Yeah, who would you sue
following?
if something wasn't followed? Who would know?
Everybody.
Yeah, like would it be the executor? Would it be like the So there's, as much of these things sound like quite, when I say sensible, like that would be like my last wishes should be respected and it should be a legally binding thing. the actual practicalities of doing it are very, very
Yeah.
different. But yeah, that was just one of the things that came up and that's been talked about end of like after death wishes.
Mm-hmm.
I think compelling people to do something that you want in law, I don't see how I could do that with a kind of like clear conscience. I mean, I do understand that, like you say, Lara, the kind of like the thought behind it is that people get the funeral that they want, and I can see why that might have been abused in the past. If someone who's an atheist has a very strongly Christian family and they are therefore forced to have a Christian funeral against their own wishes, I can see why people might think that law is a good thing. But I don't know. It just feels rife for potential abuse, that sort of thing, to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the problem is that is, in a way, again, the issue with consent. It is kind of forcing your view, forcing your view on others and making it legally binding, which I think is problematic in itself. You should be able to say, this is what I want, and trust people to do that. If they don't, then they are at fault. They have gone against you. But by the same token, if you're forcing it on other people, then it's yes, you are the asshole in this kind of thing.
And as we don't believe in the afterlife, it's not about me as the dead one anymore, because I'm not there anymore.
That's a good point. I mean, if someone's forced a Christian burial on me, at the end of the day, who gives a fuck?
It doesn't affect me.
I'm dead.
It's not what I want. Yeah. But
yeah, absolutely. And that is, from the satanic point of view, it is like once you're dead, you cease to exist in every way, shape, or form. You are essentially just slowly decaying organic matter. So there's no, oh my God, am I going to go to the afterlife or not? You're not.
We don't have that fear or pressure, whatever. And if there is afterlife and I will be buried in a way I don't like, they will know. The poltergeist.
Where are your complaints department?
I will be everywhere. Like you fuckers.
Yeah. I think another one of the things that was kind of brought up in the way that they were talking around this was the idea that what people may not quite realise is that a next of kin, when someone dies, isn't actually something that exists. So when we talk about things like, oh, who is your next of kin or anything like that, it kind of only really applies in life. And it's things like about like medical decisions or anything like that. After death, that's not a thing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So that's a kind of another reason what was being looked at in, or is being explored in this. Because one big thing, for example, that happens is you look at trans people or non-binary, gender non-conforming people and being dead named or being misgendered after death.
Oh yeah.
And so could this potentially be a way of saying that their wishes could be upheld?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's how it could be used, for example. So rather than it just being a burial versus cremation, or this is how I want a ceremony to happen, but actually something quite important like that. And how could that necessarily be?
I think it should be possible to sort of have, I don't know, something like an independent ombudsman or something like that, some kind of authority figure. I mean, yeah.
But the sensible way around this is obviously having more protection of trans people in life rather than wait until someone's died.
Yeah.
But without that
while they're here
now, then, and with all the hoops you have to jump through for all that, then your funeral wishes could be taken over by people who don't have your best interests at heart. Because, like I said, you could say that I want this person or I expect this person to do the funeral, but then someone else comes in and swoops in when they can, they just do what they want.
It's difficult.
I mean, talking about the same legal kind of quagmire that the assisted dying bill currently it has, which is what, I don't think I could argue against the fact that everyone has the right to determine their own life and death. However, the way it's being implemented is problematic, and we can, you're talking about the same kind of like difficulties in putting a legal framework around that.
Yeah, I think in all of these things, it's sort of, we're obligated to look at the people who could be most negatively affected by it, and like Lara's example of non-gender conforming people, or in terms of the assisted dying bill, disabled people, both groups of people whose lives are constantly devalued by the public, either consciously or subconsciously. I don't know what the answer is, but there should be one.
And how much binding is when you leave like a legally signed last will or whatever? Does that change anything?
Not really, because a will's more
Not
to do with
really.
your estate. Like it's not
Oh.
really to do with and this is kind of the whole point, that it's like when you can pay for your own funeral. There are plans that you can set yourself up for, like in life you can pay into a funeral plan and make your arrangements now, but whether or not your family or whoever it is enacts that is a little bit different. Just the same as you can sign up to be an organ donor and your family can, but they still have to consent, even though theoretically they can still, even though now it's presumed consent where you have to withdraw rather than join the organ donation list. Your family are still get asked, and they still get to change potentially what you wish for. So things like that about being legally bound, and it's a whole. Like I said, they're looking at a lot of things. It's not saying that things will necessarily actually change in law, but it's sort of going, for example, these are the things that could be looked at, but it's never ever so simple because there's so many other little things that come up. And like I said, the whole a funeral or things are about the dead but for the living, and it's when I'm dead, I believe I'm dead, and I won't know any of this. I won't know if my wishes have been followed, but the people who are still alive will have to live with their decision on me. And that may be easier for them knowing what I wanted, and they can say, you know what, I feel good that I did what she wanted in her funeral, and I feel good about that. Other people may feel a bit more pressure of like, well, I don't feel like I can do that because this person wants to be buried or be cremated or somewhere else, but it means that I won't have somewhere to see them, or I won't be able to fulfill that wish because it will cause me too much pain to do that or be too expensive to do that. So having such strict wishes can also be a negative, but
difficult. I think
it is. There is no way of currently, I mean, Elijah, you mentioned the will, I think, and it's like, it is like Lara said, that's your estate. That's, you leave this to people. You can put comments in your will or requests or things you would like to be done. However, that is not legally binding, and whatever funeral arrangements you make, essentially, to my understanding, that just means that whoever you made those arrangements with, your funeral's paid for and the organisation will cover the costs. But what goes on there is not, again, it's open to whoever deals with it.
What their options are, what there's
That's very interesting.
So if there's no next of kin, as Lara explained to us a minute ago, who is currently responsible for implementing? Is there even a legal responsibility for implementing someone's funeral wishes?
The legal thing that you have to satisfy is the disposal of the body, which is the burial or cremation. Like that's the legal requirement. And who deals with that? Essentially, what we have what we call sort of in the Human Tissue Act, which is highest qualifying relationship, which functionally is the next of kin as people understand it. So you're talking a spouse, a parent, a child, and it goes on and on. But for example, if you are someone and you have two children, they're both seen as equal. Like the eldest one isn't the one that makes the decision. They're both on equal footing, and you've got to hope that they're in agreement. We do encounter things in work where there are families, and there are blended families, there are step parents, etc., and you can have one set of children, for example, who are completely against another set of children, but they're both in the same level, and it's not up to us to kind of try and wade through that. They have to come to an agreement, and essentially it's who gets to register the death essentially is the person who is going to take responsibility for doing the funeral. And sadly, you do sometimes find that these warring families come out of the woodwork, and it's all about control and who wants to be able to have the final control and final say over this person. But when they actually realise, but you do realise that means you'll have to organise a funeral and spend money, then they kind of back away a bit sometimes, and it can be very, very messy. So as well, if the family doesn't have money, or there is no family, if there is no living person that can take responsibility of the funeral, it will end up being a local authority funeral, and it'll just end up being that, which is very standard cremation, and that can take a long time to happen. So it's the disposal needs to happen, and essentially it's who is willing to put the hand up and the hand in the pocket and say, yeah, that will be me. And usually it is the person who is the closest relative to that person, but families are a lot more complicated.
Oh yeah, I mean, even after I mean, I know someone who fairly recently had a situation where a family member came out of the woodwork and said they wanted to alter someone's tombstone, the gravestone, and this was like months after they were buried, and it's like, what the fuck? I mean, you can't just, but they can. I mean, there seems to be a whole mess, or even a whole missing set of something, possibly not legislation, but something that gives someone the kind of like the right to sort of like look after what it is the deceased actually wanted.
And then we go into the whole thing again of should that be legally required and illegally binding? Like, it's an entire mess. And I think, Leggero, as you said, like when you mentioned, it's my human rights to have it done this way. When you're dead, your human rights end.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's so much that you think that, this should be a thing, or that, it sounds like it would be quite just intuitive for this to happen, but there's so much that isn't. One very very messy one, for example, that we've encountered before is things like children or adults who are in care or are in fostered or in any other way. The legal guardianship or legal responsibilities of the living people involved end when someone dies, and in the case of a child, parental responsibility, if that is still with the birth parent, then it reverts back to them in terms of highest qualifying relationship, and the foster family situation or whatever it may be ends. Just like if someone has been an adult and they have someone of like power of attorney, like medical power of attorney, who maybe isn't a relative for whatever reason, that ends on death. And again, sort of highest qualifying relationship reverts back to bloodlines. And people may not realise that.
How arbitrary the whole system is.
Yeah.
I do think that I would trust any one of you as Satanists, or Satanists in general, to respect the wishes that I might have, rather than someone who might have an agenda based on a relationship that we had, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago.
Well, I mean, it is part of our creed, isn't it? I mean, and it would be nice if you could just be able to say, well, respect people's wishes even when they're dead. That's the basis of being a decent human being. But unfortunately, there's, that death often brings the worst out in some people. And I've seen it happen. And you go, families fall apart, and because there's one arsehole who's either trying to get more than they're due or thinks things should be done in a certain way. And it's like, really, at this point, that's what you're going to do?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. You know, people who
No,
couldn't
don't
control you.
mention
I'm
him here.
I'm purposely blaspheming. God, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Isn't it? The whole system's an absolute mess.
It is.
It is. It's not good. Yes.
Let's not die yet, okay?
You mentioned that there was other points you wanted to raise, Lara. Did you?
Oh no, it's just all kind. I always have like thoughts around sort of death and dying and rights and everything, and just general discussion points. But I think that was it, sort of for now. But there's so much more to say. Just generally think about grief and how a lot of rituals aren't, or a lot of grief isn't reserved just for death. There's so many ways that people will feel grief. Endings and new beginnings aren't, just for death and birth and marriage, etc. So it's just how we choose to mark them, and what rituals serve us and what doesn't, and do you need one?
I think a lot of things are rituals, whether we call them rituals or not. As you know, Lara, David Lynch died last year, and
yes,
it hit me really hard, a lot harder than I thought it was going to, because it's and the rational part of your brain is like, I never met this guy, I don't know him, why am I so upset by the fact that this man has died? And sort of like, watching old episodes of Twin Peaks, or watching Blue Velvet, or listening to a piece of music that you composed, that was I wouldn't call it a ritual, but it was, really, because it was a way of helping me accept the fact that someone who was important to me was gone. And I think as Satanists, we are uniquely placed in that we say our rituals are flexible and can be adapted for whatever a particular person wants or doesn't want. And there is no set. We're not the Catholic Church. We don't have call and response. We don't do this. And then some people say that. We don't hold up the crucifix at this point. We don't, we can do pretty much what we want to honour the person concerned.
Essentially, and this has been said before, we're honest enough to say we're making this up as we go along.
And that's a strength. That's not a weakness.
It is.
Yeah. God, we're great.
Absolutely.
Just basically, we're great and everyone else is shit, really.
This is, it's a massive subject, and I think there is plenty more to discuss, and maybe we should move this on to another episode. Actually, have another one.
Yeah, I think one of my interests through my work, like my day job, is the intersection of social justice and death, and how there are certain issues that show up in death and mortality statistics, for example, or rituals that have an effect on the living. So like I was saying before about trans people and their wishes after death and their identity being respected, and that it shouldn't just be left to death rituals for that to be an issue that is fixed. It reflects like people's lives, socioeconomic, race, all kinds, gender. It's all related, and it's just they show up so much in my work as someone who works with death, and how we can sort of leave people living lives better.
Well, thank you for coming on, Lara, because you opened my eyes to a lot that I didn't know, apart from anything else.
Yeah. This was very good.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can have you in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes, that would be great.
There's so many things we still need to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think if we could get you and Leo on.
Oh yeah, I'm gutted Leo couldn't be here today. It probably would have just been me and Leo just yelling at it, like in agreement with each other over all of it.
Leo is an authority on rituals, but it's a really fascinating topic, and we're definitely going to come back to this one. So. Does anyone else have any further thoughts or anything to add? Because we're coming up to the hour mark now.
Maybe just to sort of like say that because we do have an international audience, everything we've talked about has been kind of like UK based. I'd be interested if any of the people who might hear this are aware of different legislation in their particular area.
And it's not even UK based. The rules in Scotland are different to England and Wales, and yeah, and Ireland. So in terms of law and certain things, like I mean, just the general talk, about sort of belief and all that is one thing, but the actual practical legal systems are actually like quite different.
God.
So this is very much just England and Wales when we're talking about the legality side of things as well. It's that specific.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah. More confusion.
Yeah. If I was to just like talk about like the actual sort of just legal and like practical issues of care after death in England and Wales and Scotland and Republic of Ireland and everything like that, then that would be an hour in itself.
Blimey.
These are all topics we will definitely cover, and I think we've kind of got a bit more than scratching the surface, but I feel like there's just so much more on this subject to talk about. And yes, if anyone out there listening does have any particular comments on the specific things that happen in their country, the email to write to is in the show notes, as always.
I've been Laraj, hail Satan.
I'm Lygia, hail Satan.
I'm Lara, hail Satan.
And I'm Lithos, hail Satan, and thank you for listening.
Sorry. God. Just as I breathe in wrong.